Ruby Griffiths. Ruby Griffiths, born in Utah in 1982, was one of 4 sisters. She met Kevin Frank, an engineering professor at Brigham Young University, shortly after becoming an adult. The couple married quickly and had their first child, Sherry, in 2003, followed by 5 more children, with the youngest born in 2013. The family was devoted to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and Ruby later explained that her social media presence allowed her to share her beliefs in a way they normally wouldn't. In 2015, Ruby started documenting the lives of her family on their YouTube channel, 8 Passengers. Over time, the Frank family's vlogs gained more than 2 million subscribers and around 1 billion views. On the surface, they appeared to be just another typical American family, but the early criticisms mainly centered on the children's lack of privacy. The family filmed intimate moments, like their children's first shaves and a shopping trip where one of their daughters was buying a bra. Critics argued that this content was exploitative and unnecessary, particularly when paired with clickbait titles and thumbnails. Many raised concerns that such content might attract individuals with more sinister intentions. In the weeks that followed, fresh vlogs revealed troubling details about the Frank children, including the fact that several of them had no friends, and 2 of the older children had not had access to their mobile phones for over a year. Viewers grew increasingly concerned about Ruby's harsh disciplinary methods, which included withholding food and proper bedding as punishment for minor offenses. This raised alarm, leading to widespread exposure of the 8 Passengers channel across various internet communities. Commentary channels like J. Aubrey Swoop and H3H3 picked up on the viral clips, discussing Ruby's controversial approach to parenting. Ruby responded by sending multiple cease and desist letters to these commentary YouTubers, including Ready2Glare and Sloan. One of the most notable instances of Ruby's so-called punishments was when her 6-year-old daughter turned up to school with no lunch. When she was contacted by the girl's teacher and asked to drop something off, Ruby refused. She claimed that it was the 6-year-old's responsibility to pack her own lunch in the morning and said that going hungry throughout the day would be a punishment which would help her daughter remember that she needed to make lunch for herself. Ruby added that she asked that her daughter not be given anything to eat by the school or her peers. In various other clips, Ruby can be seen telling 2 of her children that if they don't behave, they will not be allowed to eat dinner, threatening to behead one child's plush toy, and even at one point claiming that Santa wouldn't be visiting the 2 children that year because they were not responding to other forms of punishment. Before I continue, I want to remind you that only a small percentage of people who watch my videos are actually subscribed. So if you enjoy my content, consider subscribing. It's free and you can always change your mind later. Now let's move on with the video. According to AP News, Ruby and Kevin Frank's disciplinary methods also included extreme measures like keeping their children home from school and making them clean the floorboards. Ruby defended these actions by saying, "It's because they're so numb. And the more numb your child is, the bigger the outcome they need to wake them up." One of the most controversial incidents was when they sent their 14-year-old son to a wilderness camp called the Anasazi Foundation Wilderness Program. The program's website claims it helps improve parent-child relationships by guiding children through wilderness experiences. This decision sparked further concern from the public, as it raised questions about the extent of Ruby and Kevin's methods to correct their children. The foundation, a non-profit organization headquartered in Arizona, was founded in 1988 and reportedly aims to give troubled teens a chance to heal at the hands of nature. It offers not only the wilderness camp, but also several other resources for parents, including parents' seminars. The wilderness program saw the Franks' eldest son be sent away from home for 10 weeks while living in the Arizona desert. According to Kevin, the idea with wilderness therapy is if you can survive with these peers in the wilderness with nothing more than the clothes on your back and a couple of field supplies, then there's nothing in this world you can't tackle. Ruby added that out in the desert, there were real threats including snakes, bears and cougars, stating, "I think close encounters would be good for him." The Franks never disclosed the specific actions that led them to send their 14-year-old son to the Anasazi Wilderness Program, a camp designed for troubled youths, where he was separated from everyone and everything he knew for over 2 months. However, even after his return, the punishment continued. In a later video, it was revealed that when the son was 15, he had lost access to his bedroom and had to sleep on a beanbag in the living room for 7 months. This punishment followed a series of pranks he had played on his younger brother, including one where he falsely told him they were going to Disneyland in the early hours, causing the younger sibling to pack a suitcase and head to the car, only to be devastated when the trip didn't happen. On another occasion, the son pointed a BB gun at his younger brother's face. These excessive and disproportionate punishments, including practices like ritualized starvation, sparked outrage and led to several exposes by the commentary community, further damaging the Franks' public image. But these critical videos are not without justification. Experts have noted that such severe discipline often does far more harm than good. Psychologist Marion Barker spoke with Business Insider about the issues surrounding the harsh punishment of children, stating, "It is simply concerned with getting the child to conform to a set of predetermined, often poorly communicated and ever-changing set of goalposts. So the child is almost doomed to fail. Children make choices with their behavior based on their emotions. And if you don't seek to understand and discuss these emotions, the child ends up storing up a host of resentment and anger at the very least. Worse," she added, "children can develop issues with self-worth and abandonment. Taking a child's bed is considered one of the worst forms of punishment a parent can dole out, as everyone seeks safety in their environment, and taking away the bed, quote, strips this out entirely and actually leaves the child in trauma." Likely due to the scandal in 2021, the 8 Passengers channel began to decline in popularity, and uploads became less frequent. Kevin told the media that the backlash the family had received over their punishment's tactics had also led them to losing brand deals and sponsorships. Eventually, the channel was deleted altogether. And in its place in June 2022, Connections was established. This new channel was designed to give and share family and parenting advice. Several years earlier in 2019, Ruby had met Jodi Hildebrandt after she counseled one of the Frank children. Following this, Ruby hired Hildebrandt as her personal mentor. Ruby later claimed that Jodi Hildebrandt's teachings had profoundly warped her perspective, stating, "I was led to believe this world was an evil place filled with cops who control, hospitals that injure, government agencies that brainwash, church leaders who lie and lust, husbands who refuse to protect, and children who need abuse." Jodi Hildebrandt was born in June 1969 and pursued a degree in English literature at Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah, before earning a master's degree in educational psychology from the University of Utah. Following her studies, Hildebrandt worked as the program director at a drug rehabilitation facility in Utah and became a licensed counselor in 2005. In 2007, she founded Connections, initially described as a counseling company focusing on relationships and businesses. However, Hildebrandt's career has been marked by controversy and a troubled track record. In 2012, she was put on probation for 18 months after disclosing sensitive confidential information about a former client to the LDS Church and Brigham Young University several years earlier. She claimed that the patient had serious issues but never formally diagnosed him, and reportedly didn't even spend enough time with the patient to figure out what was going on. Furthermore, in 2010, a teen living with Hildebrandt described as her niece reported her to the police after being forced to sleep outside in a sleeping bag and having duct tape placed over her mouth. The teen also described being made to wear the same clothes for weeks on end, and investigators discovered that the girl was not enrolled in school. The teenager told officers, "Jodi is some kind of therapist and thinks she has all the answers. But Jodi insults me all the time in front of others and acts like I am evil by not letting me talk to kids or others." Neighbors recalls that in 2020, the Franke family first moved to Springville. Initially, they interacted with their local church and the children befriended others their own age. But as the years passed, the children were eventually removed from school. Around the same time as Connections came into play, Ruby and Kevin separated, with Kevin moving out of the family home in August 2022. The children were frequently left home alone from this point on. And eventually the blinds were left permanently closed and paper was placed over the windows. Both neighbors and the oldest Frankie daughter, who was now at university, repeatedly tried to involve the police, but their requests that the children be checked on often led nowhere, as the children never answered the door. The audience, Hildebrandt and Ruby had on Connections, was not nearly as large and loyal as it had been on the 8 Passengers channel. Ruby also created a new Instagram account as part of her work with Connections called Moms of Truth, which similarly to Connections offered parenting advice. On the Instagram account, Ruby stated that followers should avoid what she referred to as coping strategies. These coping strategies included social media, exercise, and socializing. Unsurprisingly, many people, including other parents, found the strategies that Connections taught to be extreme and harsh, with some critics likening the program to a cult. NBC News reported that several former clients said Hildebrandt's techniques were based in the LDS faith, and that she used an extreme approach that included shaming her clients. Connections branded itself as a support group designed for mothers, intended to help treat those lost in the darkness of a distortion. Together, Ruby and Hildebrandt created video content that taught things including parents shouldn't love their children unconditionally, or that children don't deserve privacy. The pair were also accused of being homophobic, transphobic, ableist, and racist in this content. Everything in Ruby's life turned upside down when she and Hildebrandt were arrested in Athens, Utah on August 30, 2023 on suspicion of child abuse. Shortly before their arrest, Ruby's youngest son, now 12, climbed out of a window in the home he and his siblings shared with Hildebrandt and ran to a neighbor's house. He asked for food and water, and the neighbor was alarmed to discover duct tape on the boy's ankles and wrists. They promptly alerted the police. Arrest records later stated that he was taken to the hospital and treated for deep lacerations from being tied up with rope, as well as malnourishment. His 9-year-old sister, Ruby's youngest daughter, was also rescued from the scene and found to be malnourished. The 2 remaining children in the house were taken into custody of Child Protection Services. Ruby's youngest son told police that Hildebrandt would put cayenne pepper and honey on their wounds, which were caused by being tied with a rope. Inside the home, investigators discovered sellotape, saran wrap, lots of paperwork, 2 super absorbent dressings, 2 Coban bandages, 3 sets of brown and white rope, 2 pairs of handcuffs, and 3 carabiners. Further information documented in the arrest record showed that Ruby had filmed the video in Hildebrandt's house just days earlier, meaning she was very aware of the abuse her children were suffering. She was denied bail following her arrest, given the state of her children and the fact that investigators still needed to speak with them. Both Ruby and Hildebrandt were subsequently charged with 6 felony counts of aggravated child abuse during a shelter hearing about Ruby's 4 youngest children. Her 2 oldest children had not been living at home at the time of the abuse. She made the bizarre allegation that one of the children had been sexually abusing a younger sibling and had allegedly confessed to sexually abusing others. In mid-December, Ruby's lawyers claimed she was a devoted mother as they looked to secure a plea deal. They claimed that Hildebrandt had taken advantage of the mother of 6, noting, quote, "Over an extended period, Hildebrandt systematically isolated Ruby Frank from her extended family, all the children, and her husband, Kevin Frank. This prolonged isolation resulted in Miss Frank being subjected to a distorted sense of morality shaped by Hildebrandt's influence." A statement filed with the court to support her guilty pleas revealed that Ruby had abused her children from May 22, 2023 up until her arrest. She claimed that the punishments were a form of repentance and described her actions as acts of love. She also admitted that her actions involved physical torture. She sent her 12-year-old son to carry out demanding manual labor without shoes or water, leaving him with damaging sunburn. Furthermore, the boy was given little food and was often given plain meals, while everyone else got different, more flavorful dishes compared to him. Ruby also admitted to kicking the young boy while wearing boots, holding his head underwater, and hog-tying him. He was kept isolated with no entertainment. Ruby's youngest daughter didn't fare better. She was also forced to work outside, run on dirt roads without shoes for lengthy periods of time, and was starved and not given water. Both children were declined beds and had their heads shaved as punishment. In her diaries, Ruby referred to the children as spawns of Satan, and of her son stated, quote, "I will not feed a demon." She also called him a compulsive liar with a cold, dead heart. As for her youngest daughter, She wrote that she was manipulative and recounted the time she had had her stand in the rain for hours, cut off her hair, and once doused her in dog-wash water after she complained about being hungry. Prosecutors later noted in a statement, the women appeared to fully believe that the abuse they inflicted was necessary to teach the children how to properly repent for imagined sins and to cast the evil spirits out of their bodies. Both Ruby and Hildebrandt were deemed to be motivated by religious extremism. Ruby's husband, Kevin, reported that he had not seen his children for around 13 months since he and his wife had separated, and that he had no idea about the abuse that was happening. He added that Hildebrandt played a role in the couple's marriage disintegrating, claiming that she manipulated him and destroyed his family, as the relationship between Kevin and Ruby grew strained after she began working on connections. Ruby reportedly told her husband before he left that though their marriage needed work, it would be better if he moved out and ceased contact with his 4 youngest children. Notably, following her mother's arrest, the oldest Frankie child, Sherry, who was 20 at the time and studying at university, posted a picture on her Instagram stories of police officers at Hildebrandt's house simply captioned, "Finally." Sherry had said in an April 2023 podcast that she had cut ties with her family a year earlier after she discovered that her mother was working on connections with Hildebrandt. In another Instagram post, she wrote, "Me and my family are so glad justice is being served. We've been trying to tell the police and CPS for years about this, and so glad they finally decided to step up. Kids are safe, but there's a long road ahead." Ruby's 3 sisters, who all have YouTube channels themselves, released a statement which claimed that they had been keeping quiet about Ruby for several years for the sake of her children, noting, quote, "Behind the public scene, we have done everything we could to try and make sure the kids were safe. Ruby was arrested, which needed to happen. Jody was arrested, which needed to happen. The kids are now safe, which is the #1 priority." Following Ruby's arrest, Kevin began seeking custody of his children and filed for divorce. He also attempted to get his eldest daughter, Sherry, arrested for stealing electronics and passports 2 days after the arrest, stating that she was not lawfully allowed in their home. Sherry claimed she was not aware that she was not allowed into her parents' home, and Kevin allegedly threatened to sue the police department because they declined to press charges against her. Ruby ultimately pleaded guilty to 4 counts of child abuse in December 2023 and was given 4 1 to 15-year sentences in prison. Hildebrandt received the same sentence, and they will both serve them consecutively. Due to a Utah law that caps the sentence duration for consecutive penalties, they will only serve 30 years max in prison, despite their sentences totaling a maximum of 60 years. At the sentencing, Jody Hildebrandt claimed, "I sincerely loved those children. One of the reasons I didn't go to trial is because I didn't want them to relive this. I desire for them to heal physically and emotionally." However, the prosecution dismissed her statements, portraying her as a continuing risk to the community. They emphasized her apparent lack of remorse for her actions, underscoring the severity of the harm inflicted. Ruby, in her plea of guilty, stated with deep remorse, "With my deepest regret and sorrow for my family and my children, guilty." At her sentencing hearing, she further expressed her anguish, saying, "I'll never stop crying for hurting your tender souls. My willingness to sacrifice all for you was masterfully manipulated into something very ugly. I took from you all that was soft and safe and good." Addressing the influence of Jody Hildebrandt, Ruby admitted, "I was led to believe the world was an evil place. For the past 4 years, I have chosen to follow counsel and guidance that have led me to a dark delusion." Moving on to the next case. Scott Johnson. Scott Johnson and Michael Noon formed a deep connection after meeting at the University of Cambridge, where Scott had moved to pursue his studies in mathematics. Their relationship blossomed, with Scott, originally from the United States, and Michael, an Australian musicologist, finding a strong bond despite the different paths their lives had taken. The couple's love for each other grew as they navigated life in England together, creating a life of shared experiences and passions. Then, in 1986, Scott moved to Canberra, Australia on a student visa to complete his PhD at the Australian National University. That way he could be with Michael. On December 10, 1988, A man's body was found on rocks at the foot of cliffs at Bluefish Point in North Head, near Manly, Sydney. The man was quickly identified as 27-year-old Scott Johnson. The police initially believed that he took his own life and jumped down the cliff. His family disputed this. They brought up the fact that his clothes were neatly folded on top of the cliff and that his wallet was stolen. One of Scott's professors also said that he had just put the final touches on his PhD. He was hopeful for the future and could have a job at any of the great universities around the world. Something else that pointed to the possibility that Scott was pushed and did not jump was that there were gangs of men who roamed various Sydney locations in search of gay men to hurt. It was only in 2017 that investigators believed that Scott did not take his own life. A renewed police investigation was then launched. In 2018, a $1 million reward for information which could help solve the crime was announced. Scott's brother, Steve Johnson, who is a tech entrepreneur, then gave a $1 million of his own money to make the reward $2 million. The reward proved to be key to finally solving this cold case. In May of 2020, investigators arrested Scott White in connection to the case. It was announced that someone came forward and told investigators that White was the one that pushed Scott off the cliff. Then, on January 10, 2022, White confessed in court. He took responsibility for taking Scott's life. White is now convicted of the crime and will soon be sentenced. Steve expressed a mix of relief and sorrow after the arrest, saying, "Suddenly it was over. This man finally found the soul to confess and put an end to this. My family is all in tears." The emotional weight of the confession was evident, as the long-awaited closure brought both grief and a sense of justice. Investigators, now with new leads, have started looking into similar crimes from the 1970s and 1980s, hoping to uncover any further connections and bring additional resolution to unresolved cases. Moving on to the next case. Sonia Carmen Hiroke Stone. Sonia Carmen Hiroke Stone, born on May 27, 1951, in Quebec, Canada, relocated to the United States in the 1970s. She married Michael Stone in 1976, and they had a daughter together, but their marriage ended in divorce. By 1980, Sonia was a single mother, raising her 4-year-old daughter on her own while working for the Levi-Strauss Company. On October 15, 1981, after taking her daughter to school and running errands, Sonia Carmen Hiroke Stone returned home. Around 12 p.m., her friend, Caroline McBride, visited her after multiple attempts to reach her by phone went unanswered. Upon arriving at Sonia's home in Carmel Point, Monterey County, California, Caroline discovered Sonia's lifeless body just inside the front door. The 30-year-old Sonia appeared to have been sexually assaulted, lying on the floor with her purse nearby, its contents spilled around her. Sonia was half-dressed and had been strangled with a pair of her own pantyhose, which was found tightly wrapped around her neck. Her shirt and jacket were torn and pulled back. A terrified Caroline placed a call through to the Monterey County Sheriff's Office, who immediately dispatched officers to the crime scene. The investigators were of the opinion that the position where Sonia was found in her home suggested that she was attacked as soon as she opened her front door to go in. They also examined Sonia Carmen's body and discovered that she had a broken left ring fingernail with blood beneath it, which indicated that she had struggled with her killer, ultimately scratching him before her death. The brutal crime that took the life of Sonia Carmen Hiroke Stone left both the police and her family searching for answers. The following day, investigators canvassed the neighborhood, knocking on doors and conducting interviews. When one detective interviewed Michael Scott Glazebrook, a 25-year-old neighbor who lived directly across the street from Sonia, he noticed a 3 to 4 inch vertical scratch on his right cheek. The detective immediately inquired about how and when he had sustained the injury. Glazebrook, however, made inconsistent statements. He told the detective he got it from cutting plexiglass in his garage, while he told his parents that he got it in a fight at Monterey Peninsula College, where he schooled. Due to his inconsistency, Michael Scott Glazebrook was charged with Sonia Carmen's death in 1982. But when the case went to trial in 1983, the jury came back with a 9-3 not guilty verdict, which made the district attorney's office decide not to retry the case, even though a retrial was possible, regardless of the jury's decision. Michael Scott was, however, discharged and acquitted. With no significant DNA technology in the 1970s, the case could not be pursued, and it went cold for 39 years. In the year 2020, detectives at the Monterey County Sheriff's Office and Deputy District Attorney, Matt L. Hierro, re-examined the Sonia Carmen Stone's case. They found out that there were several pieces of evidence in Sonia's case file that could be now tested utilizing modern DNA technology. These pieces of evidence, including the DNA found under Sonia's broken fingernail and right breast, were sent to the Department of Justice DNA laboratory for testing. Since Michael Scott Glazebrook was the number one suspect on the list of the investigators in 1981, detectives got a search warrant for a new sample of his DNA. They were able to obtain a new DNA profile easily because Michael Scott Glazebrook was still alive and works in Monterey County. After the DNA sample from Sonia Carmen Stone's crime scene was tested and compared with the DNA sample gotten from Michael Scott Glazebrook, it immediately came out as a match. Detectives then conducted surveillance at Michael Scott Glazebrook's residence in the city of Seaside. Around 8 p.m. on August 14, 2021, Glazebrook drove away from his home. Michael Scott Glazebrook was eventually arrested in connection with the murder of Sonia Carmen Hiroke Stone. In a symbolic gesture to honor Sonia, all detectives involved in his capture wore Levi's jeans, a nod to her time working at Levi Strauss. After an 8-day jury trial in 2023, Glazebrook, now 67 years old, was convicted of Sonia's murder. He is set to be sentenced in April, with the possibility of spending the rest of his life in prison without parole. Following the conviction, Sonia's daughter, now 44, expressed her relief, saying, "It's been a day that we have been waiting for a really long time. Sonia was a wonderful woman, and we're so happy to see justice for her." Moving on to the next case. Thomas Bartlett. Thomas Bartlett, living in Sugar Land, Texas, was a privileged and arrogant teenager, surrounded by luxury and affection from his wealthy parents. He attended Clements High School but was expelled after committing a series of burglaries. As part of the expulsion process, he was evaluated by a mental health professional, who diagnosed him with clinical symptoms of delusional paranoid disorder. Despite this, Thomas's parents, unwavering in their support, ignored the diagnosis and continued to provide him with an extravagant lifestyle. They even went as far as buying him a lakeside home in Texas, rent-free, so he could attend a nearby college. The Whitakers, captivated by Thomas's charm and his fabricated stories of success, continued to indulge him with luxury vehicles and paid for his steep university tuition. He convinced them that he was excelling in college and would graduate on time. On the day of what was supposed to be his graduation, they gifted him a brand new $4,000 Rolex watch as a celebration. However, the catch was that Thomas had never actually graduated, nor was he even enrolled at the college. Just hours after receiving the extravagant gift, Thomas would go on to kill the very people who had given him everything. On December 10, 2003, Thomas falsely boasted to his parents that he had just finished his final exams and was looking forward to graduating. To celebrate, they drove to the Papadu restaurant with Thomas and enjoyed what unbeknownst to them would be their last meal. What the Whitakers didn't know was that their son had been living a lie. He was not about to graduate college, he wasn't even enrolled in college, and his lies were so deeply embedded into his world that he couldn't bear the idea of his parents finding out the truth. So he sought the help of Christopher Brashear and Stephen Champagne to make sure that the truth would never come out. While the Whitakers were enjoying a family meal, accomplice Christopher Brashear let himself into the Whitaker family home and, following Thomas's instructions, helped himself to the husband's gun and bullets from a safety box in his bedroom. Brashear ransacked the home to make it appear as if a burglary had taken place, and then lay in wait for the fated family to return to their house. Meanwhile, Stephen Champagne tailed the family home where he waited as a getaway car. When the family arrived, Thomas said that he had to grab his cell phone from his parked car and separated momentarily from the rest of the family. The family entered the house with the younger brother, Kevin, 19, leading the way. When Kevin initially saw the masked intruder, he laughed thinking it was a prank being pulled off by one of Thomas's friends in honor of his graduation. But when he was shot once in the chest and collapsed to the floor, his mother, Patricia, screamed out, "Oh God, no," and all pretenses of a light-hearted prank flew out the window. Kent, Patricia's husband of 26 years, ran inside and was subsequently shot in the shoulder. Thomas, returning from his car, then ran into the house and pretended to struggle with the gunman, getting shot himself in his left arm as a way to stage his innocence. The gunman then ran out of the back door and hopped over the fence and jumped into the getaway car. Kevin, the little brother, died almost instantly, and his mother Patricia died while being airlifted to the nearby hospital. The father, Kent, was also airlifted to the hospital and survived the murder attempt. Thomas, in an attempt to divert suspicion, initially told officers that their attacker was African American. Kent, Thomas's father, initially vowed to forgive whomever murdered his family, but his faith was shaken when it was revealed that his precious son, who had been living and recovering with Kent before fleeing to Mexico upon hearing that he was going to soon be arrested, was actually the murderer. Thomas hid in Mexico under the assumed name of Rudy Rios for almost a year until in September of 2005, Mexican authorities delivered him back to the U.S. to face trial. During the trial, Christopher Brashear claimed Thomas promised a cut of the $1 million insurance policy taken out on his parents, but it was revealed no such policy existed. In all actuality, Thomas committed murders out of shame and cowardice, not for money. He was terrified of the truth coming out. Nevertheless, Kent Whitaker stuck by his son's side and believed him when he blamed his mental illness for the evil deeds. Thomas, ever the master manipulator, even went so far as to claim that his death penalty conviction would further victimize his father, as he would lose his only remaining son. In a shocking turn of events, Thomas's father, Kent, stood by him throughout the legal proceedings, repeatedly stating that he had forgiven his son. Initially, Thomas's execution was scheduled for early 2018, but due to Kent's relentless efforts, his sentence was commuted from death to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Despite the heinous crime, Kent's unwavering support for his son remained steadfast. Moving on to the next case. Timothy Thomas. Timothy Thomas, 33, has been indicted on charges of murder and burglary in connection with the cold case killing of 16-year-old Sebastian Oxenius, a Buchholz High School student, that occurred 13 years ago. The indictment was announced during a news conference on Monday, February 5th, by Aliquot County Sheriff Emery Gainey and 8th Circuit State Attorney Brian Kramer. On June 25, 2010, Sebastian was at home in the Benwood subdivision of Gainesville, playing video games with a neighbor. While in the kitchen, he encountered a burglar, who shot him multiple times. Despite his family's immediate 911 call, paramedics declared Sebastian dead at the scene. During the press conference, Sebastian's brother, Boris Oxenius, expressed the family's hope for justice, stating, "We hope as a family that you can help us get to the final chapter of this, which is bringing my brother justice." He was only 16 years of age. His life was stolen. Investigators discovered that Timothy Thomas had used a car borrowed from a female friend during the time of the murder. Although they do not believe she had prior knowledge of Thomas's plans, Sheriff Gainey urged anyone with information to come forward. The woman is described as a 20-year-old Hispanic with a short, heavy build. The vehicle used by Thomas was identified as a white or cream Kia Sportage, or a similar model. Sheriff Gainey acknowledged the long and challenging road ahead, assuring the community, "I know this has been a long and difficult road. We're making some progress, but we also understand it's not over yet. Rest assured, we'll be with you every step of the way." In 2021, new evidence emerged that led to the identification of Timothy Thomas as a suspect in Sebastian Oxenius' murder, currently serving a life sentence for the attempted murder of a Monroe County Sheriff's deputy in Stock Island, Florida in 2015. Thomas has an extensive criminal record with 23 felony charges and 8 misdemeanors. He has faced multiple arrests by various law enforcement agencies for battery, burglary, and attempted murder throughout the state. These arrests range from the Key West Police Department to different Central Florida agencies. In 2015, Thomas was stopped by authorities in Monroe County for driving with a stolen license plate. A video presented during the press conference on Monday depicted a shootout between Thomas and the deputy, who was shot in the chest, but fortunately saved by his bulletproof vest. On December 23, Thomas was formally charged by a grand jury in Aliquot County with 1 count of murder during trafficking and 1 count of armed burglary. The specifics of the indictment have not been disclosed according to court records. His arraignment occurred on Monday morning at the Alachua County Courthouse, and he is currently held at the Aliquot County Jail with a bail set at $1 million. Thomas's court-appointed public defender has requested to withdraw from the case, citing an undisclosed and irreconcilable conflict of interest. Moving on to the next case. William Newton. In 1990, the dismembered body parts of 25-year-old William Newton were found in a West Hollywood dumpster, sending shockwaves through the small LGBT community, already reeling from the HIV and AIDS crisis. His murder, which remained unsolved for over 32 years, became known as the gay community's version of the Black Dahlia case. Despite years of dedicated investigative efforts, the case remained cold, leaving many to wonder who was responsible for such a brutal act. After 3 decades, a group of amateur sleuths finally solved the mystery of William Newton's murder. The case brings us to Los Angeles, a city known for its vibrant nightlife, world-class attractions, and bustling entertainment industry. With its movie studios, Sunset Strip, Venice Beach, and numerous other cultural and recreational offerings, Los Angeles has always attracted people from all walks of life. William Arnold Newton, born on July 26, 1965, in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, was one of those who eventually found his way to the City of Angels. William Newton's parents were never married and lived separately. Growing up, William developed a deep passion for the arts. His friends often saw him immersed in creative writing and poetry, with themes reflecting his connection to nature and his inner world. William considered himself both a poet and an illustrative artist, showcasing a wide range of talents that left a lasting impression on those around him. William Newton's father, Richard Harriman, once described him as a very intelligent young man. William spent most of his childhood in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, where he attended elementary and junior high school. In 1979, after finishing junior high, he and his mother, whose name has not been revealed in reports, relocated to Ladysmith, Wisconsin. However, their stay there was brief, as they moved once more to Oklahoma City shortly after William's freshman year of high school in 1980. The constant change in environments seemed to affect William deeply, as he craved stability. He decided to pack his bags and move in with his father, Richard Harriman, believing his father would be glad to have him. However, when William arrived in Eau Claire, where his father lived, he was met with a shocking reception, far from the warm welcome he had expected. At 16 years old, William was devastated by his father's rejection, but he refused to return to his mother's home. Instead, he embraced his independence and made the brave decision to start a new life on his own. Over the next 3 years, William traveled across the United States, spending time in various cities, including Oklahoma, before eventually settling in Los Angeles in 1985. During his stay there, he met a man named Terry Elliott with whom he began a romantic relationship. William also discovered his love for beauty and makeup, and this led him to make a decision to pursue a career as a professional beautician. He studied all there was to know about skincare, makeup, and fashion. Upon the completion of his makeup training, he earned his beautician license. In 1984, William Newton moved to Los Angeles and started a new life. Despite the challenges of starting fresh in a new city, William didn't have to wait long for opportunities. His impressive resume, showcasing his skills as a beautician, helped him land a job in the entertainment industry, working as a makeup artist and choreographer for music videos. Since the job was not full-time, he took on a second position at the Hollywood Spa, a gay bathhouse. It was during one of his shifts there that he met David Ray, who was immediately drawn to William's personality. David was said to have been around the vicinity to serve as a judge to a beauty contest for a local gay magazine. William's encounter with David was another stepping stone to the peak of his career. David Ray was an adult film producer whose area of expertise was the gay adult videos. David saw William as a prospect and decided to embrace him, introducing him to the gay movie industry and helping him land roles in several gay erotic movies. Over time, William and David's relationship went beyond just a business relationship. The two became romantically involved, and in 1987, they formed a partnership, establishing their own adult film company, London Ray Productions. William took on multiple roles at the company, working as a movie producer, makeup artist, and set designer under the name Bill A. London. He also acted in films produced by the company, using the names Billy London and Billy Porter. Since London Ray Productions was a new establishment, and there wasn't much money to change movie settings, David and William would film their movies in their apartment. Oftentimes, William would redecorate the apartment to make it unique for every movie scene. As their movie production started doing so well and money started rolling in, William and David started to live their best lives. If they were not making movies, they would frequent the bars and clubs partying and having fun. In 1990, William and David parted ways and began living separately. Around October of that year, William, feeling worn out by life in Los Angeles, decided to take a temporary break and move to Las Vegas, where his stepsister Michelle lived. Michelle mentioned that William needed a mental health break at the time. Besides the fresh opportunities Las Vegas promised, he was also looking forward to reuniting with his mother, who had plans to move to the area. However, despite making preparations for the move, William never boarded the flight to Las Vegas, and fate took a different turn. One fateful night, on the October 28, 1990, William Newton went to a well-known nightclub in Los Angeles, which was known as Rage Nightclub. He sat for a while at his favorite spot in the club, sipping his drink and observing those dancing and having fun around him. After a few shots, he felt free and decided to join the group of clubbers dancing and having fun. Time flew by as he partied into the night, letting loose and having fun. After a few more shots, he realized it was getting late and decided to go home. William got up and staggered toward the exit of the nightclub, clearly intoxicated, as those around him noticed. While he managed to exit the club, he was never seen alive again. The next morning, on October 29, 1990, as Los Angeles residents went about their routine activities, unaware of the tragedy, a homeless individual was searching through dumpsters behind Santa Monica Boulevard. While looking for food or discarded items, he stumbled upon something horrifying. He approached the dumpsters one after the other. Upon lifting the lid of a particular dumpster, he discovered a plastic bag, which seemed quite resilient. He tore the bag open and what he saw shook him to the core. Staring back at him was a human head and feet. In all his years of searching dumpsters, he had never encountered such traumatizing and horrific sight. The homeless individual quickly shut the dumpster and alerted passers-by to the gruesome find. Authorities arrived shortly after, confirming that the severed head found in the dumpster belonged to William Newton. A search was conducted in nearby dumpsters within a 2-mile radius to locate other body parts, but it yielded no further results. An autopsy later revealed that William had been under the influence of methamphetamine at the time of his death. Also, the forensics revealed evidence of strangulation and blunt force trauma on the head before he was murdered. Detective Wendy Burnt, who is now retired, was one of those detectives who arrived at the scene and was petrified at how gruesomely William Newton's body was mutilated. She said that she was shocked that something like that could happen, even though William was gay and worked in the gay adult film industry. Wendy Burns said it did not matter to her. He did not deserve to die in such a horrible manner. The Los Angeles Police Department launched an investigation into William Newton's case, seeking clues to uncover the truth behind his murder and why his body parts were discarded in a dumpster. Wendy Byrne led the investigative team, ensuring they gave their utmost effort in solving the case. Over the following weeks and months, the team received hundreds of tips and leads, but all proved fruitless. Investigators canvassed the neighborhood where William's remains were found, but no one had any information about his killer or the whereabouts of his other body parts. Having exhausted all tips and leads, the investigators had nothing tangible to work with, and the William Newton's case eventually went cold for a long time. 15 years after the murder, in 2005, the Los Angeles Police Department issued a public statement indicating that they were reopening and reinvestigating the William Newton's cold case. They requested tips and leads from the public. But in the long run, nothing of use came out of the investigation, and the case went cold again. However, by the end of 2006, William Newton's case gained the media attention once again when Mickey Ski, a Los Angeles reporter, claimed that Richard Harriman had reached out to him, saying the Los Angeles Police Department had neglected solving the murder case of his son. When the Los Angeles Police Department caught wind of the growing public interest in William Newton's case, they issued a statement assuring that they hadn't forgotten about the murder and were continuing their efforts to solve it. Richard Harriman, William's father, had provided an email address for any updates regarding the case. Unfortunately, he did not live to see justice for his son, passing away at the age of 65 on May 30, 2011. In 2020, two podcasters, Christopher Rice and Eric Shaw Quinn, both gay authors and best friends, became intrigued by the cold case. Christopher first learned about it from an adult entertainment magazine, and the two decided to investigate further. Ever since then, the case had remained fixed in their minds. In 2012, they both began their podcast show, which was named The Dinner Party Show. In one of the show's episodes in 2020, Christopher Rice decided to mention the William Newton's case, and how there hasn't been an arrest since 1990. At the end of the show, Christopher then appealed to the listeners to come forward with tips and leads that could bring justice to the William Newton's case. A couple of months later, Christopher Rice and Eric Shaw Quinn did another episode on the William Newton's case, where they talked about all the facts they have been able to gather about the case since the last time they spoke about it in their previous episode. In one of the podcast episodes, Christopher Rice shared that a man named Ron Wheeler had contacted him, claiming to have crucial information about the William Newton case. Ron revealed that on the night of October 28, 1990, he had been at the same Rage nightclub as William. According to Ron, he saw William leaving the club with another man who resembled Jeffrey Dahmer, the infamous American gay serial killer. Dahmer, known for his gruesome murders of 17 boys and men in the Milwaukee area between the 1970s and 1990s, was arrested in 1991, nearly a year after William's death. Dahmer was later sentenced to 16 life sentences for his crimes. Even though Jeffrey Dahmer's profile fitted that of someone who could have killed William Newton, there was no way to confirm that since he already died in prison in November of 1994 when a fellow inmate attacked and beat him to death. After Christopher Rice had revealed all he and Eric Shaw Quinn had dug up about the William Newton's case and the possible connection to Jeffrey Dahmer, he was hopeful that someone, somewhere, who knew something about the case would reach out to them soon, with evidence and proofs that could eventually arrest William Newton's murderer. Around the same time, Detective John Lamberti started to have an interest in the William Newton's case. He went through all the evidence, materials, and files his predecessors had used in the case, and was surprised at the amount of efforts they had shown to the case. Using his predecessors' work on the case as a guide, Detective John Lamberti began to delve deeper into the William Newton case, examining it from every possible angle. During his investigation, he searched for William Newton's name online and stumbled upon the latest podcast episode by Christopher Rice and Eric Shaw Quinn, where they speculated that Jeffrey Dahmer might have been involved in William's murder. Intrigued by the theory, Detective Lamberti listened to the episode, which sparked even greater interest in the case. He then reached out to Christopher and Eric, arranging a meeting where the three of them discussed the case in detail, sharing all the information they had gathered and speculating on possible leads. At the end of the meeting, their mutual goal was to solve the mystery behind the William Newton's murder case. Apparently, the three men were not the only ones fascinated about the William Newton's case. About the same time, a documentary filmmaker known as Rachel Mason had also developed an interest in the case and was busy performing an underground investigation. In 2017, Rachel learned about William Newton's murder by coincidence when she was working on a popular Netflix documentary about a gay adult bookstore known as the Circus of Books. She visited a local writer and an activist named Mike Szymanski. As Rachel was searching for tangible and compelling material for her documentary, Mike, who had a collection of old West Hollywood photos, offered to let her go through them. While they were flipping through the album, a 1990 article about William Newton's murder case accidentally slipped out, catching Rachel's attention. She picked it up and saw that it discussed William's murder and the lack of an arrest in the case. Intrigued, she asked Mike for more details. Mike, eager to share, began to explain what he knew about the case, providing her with additional context that could prove valuable for her documentary. Rachel Mason instantly developed an interest in the case, but she needed to work on the Circus of Books documentary. When she was done with the documentary, she began looking for other projects to work on. She then remembered the William Newton's case, which she had read from an article at Mike's place. She slowly began to look closely at the case, and over time, she became obsessed with it. The case wouldn't leave her mind, so she decided to start her own underground investigation. Determined to uncover every detail that could lead to solving William Newton's case, Rachel reached out to the public through a Facebook group dedicated to the gay community, appealing for any helpful information or tips. She specifically inquired about the whereabouts of Jeffrey Dahmer during the time of William's murder in 1990. After some time, Rachel received a message from Clark Williams, a stay-at-home dad from Sherman Oaks. Clark, who had recently become more active on Facebook after his daughter left for college, had connected with people from his youth in a gay history group centered around Wisconsin, his home state. Clark Williams, who grew up in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, just like William Newton, became interested in helping to solve the case and believed he could assist Rachel Mason to fill in the blanks of William Newton's lifestyle before his death, since he had a unique viewpoint on what it was like growing up as gay in Wisconsin at the time. He then reached out to Rachel and told her that Jeffrey Dahmer never committed any murders beyond Milwaukee and Ohio. Rachel Mason appreciated the tip and was excited for the new development in the case. Since she was going to write a documentary on the William Newton's case, she needed someone who knew much or little about his life story. She quickly arranged a meeting with Clark Williams to hear what he has to say. During the meeting, Clark Williams shared that when he came across William Newton's case on the Facebook group, he felt a deep personal connection to it. Not only were they both gay, but they were also born in the same year, just a week apart. Clark felt compelled to get involved and help in any way he could, driven by the eerie similarities between his own life and William's. Billy Newton was an actual person, a person from my community, and I wanted to do justice for Billy so he would not just be remembered for how he died, but for how he lived, Clark told the media. The year 1990 was a time when thousands of American gay men died during the AIDS epidemic, and the murder of William Newton reflected the lives of so many gay men and teenagers at the time. After sharing with Rachel all that he knew about the gay community during the time of William Newton's murder, he promised to spend more time on the case personally. He went to Fresno, where Jeffrey Dahmer's mother lived in 1990, asked friends in Milwaukee some questions that could lead to solving William Newton's case, but got nothing. Clark Williams then got in touch with Detective John Lamberti whenever he finds a lead to the case. John Lamberti, appreciative of their dedication, welcomed Clark and Rachel into the investigation, recognizing that the Los Angeles Police Department lacked the necessary resources to crack the case. Clark, in his free time, dedicated himself to researching William Newton's case. Given William's involvement in gay adult films, Clark shifted his focus to the gay pornography industry to uncover any potential clues. His efforts led him to a man named Rick Pasquale, who around the time of William's murder, had claimed to be a private investigator working on the case. But he was actually in the gay porn industry for 20 years, which he never disclosed. Clark began to make his research on the life of Rick Pasquale. He discovered that his real name was Richard Lawrence, and that he had directed a pornographic film titled The Devil and Danny Webster. This was the head start Clark needs in the case. Since Rick Pasquez and William Newton had worked in the same industry in 1990, he decided to reach out to Pasquez in order to find tips on what could have possibly happened to William Newton. Clark, unable to speak with Rick Pasquez due to his death, turned his attention to researching the cast of the film Pasquez had directed, hoping to find individuals who might still be alive and willing to share insights into William Newton's life. During his research, Clark came across a man named Billy Houston, who was still alive and had appeared in the movie. Further investigation revealed that Billy Houston was actually Daryl Lynn Madden, a rising star in the gay adult film industry. Further research revealed that Daryl Lynn Madden was alive and serving life sentences in jail after killing 2 gay men, including his friend, Bradley Qualls. According to Daryl, he and Bradley Qualls had committed the first murder when they went out one fateful night with a menacing plan to initiate Bradley Qualls into their skinhead cult group, known as the Chaos Squad Skinheads. And to do this, they needed to kidnap and kill a gay man for the initiation. Daryl and Bradley then calmly lurked in the streets of Oklahoma, waiting for the unfortunate gay man to pass by. A man named Stephen Domar eventually got into their death trap. Daryl and Bradley then led Stephen into a secluded area, where they restrained him in his own car before taking him to a more isolated spot, ensuring he wouldn't be able to escape. Despite Stephen's desperate cries and pleas for his life, he was unable to overpower the 2 men. They ultimately strangled him to death using his own coat hanger. Afterward, Daryl and Bradley disposed of his body in a nearby creek. In a shocking turn of event, Daryl then pointed a gun at his accomplice and friend, Bradley, shooting and killing him on the spot for no known reason. Daryl then fled the scene, leaving Bradley's corpse behind. However, he could not hide his crimes for long, because he was arrested shortly and made to face the consequences of his crimes. Clark Williams was shocked at the kind of person Daryl Lynn Madden was and decided to do further investigation and research into his life in Oklahoma. He then found out that Daryl had once done an interview for a book titled American Honor Killings. Clark, determined to uncover more about William Newton's case, decided to order the book, despite its limited availability. After waiting for some time, he finally received it. Eagerly, he flipped through the pages, but when he reached a particular section, he was stunned by what he read. In the interview, Daryl Lynn Madden not only confessed to the murders of Stephen Domar and Bradley Qualls, but also revealed the killing of another gay man in Los Angeles. Though, he failed to provide details of the crime in the book. But Clark was thrilled at the possibility that Daryl could be referring to William Newton since he was gay and had been killed in Los Angeles. Clark strongly had this belief that the killer of William Newton was about to be discovered finally. In order to ascertain this fact, Clark made a call to Detective John Lombardi and met up with him to discuss everything he had found out. John Lombardi, whose cold case department had put back the William Newton's case on the shelf 2 weeks before Clark's tip, did not waste time to inform his team about the new development in the case. They got to work, diving into research on Daryl Lynn Madden's lifestyle in 1990. During their investigation, they discovered that the gay movie industry Daryl had been involved in at the time was located on Santa Monica Boulevard, the same area where William Newton's dismembered body parts had been found. All the leads seemed to be converging. To seek answers, on January 4, 2023, Detective John Lamberti, accompanied by Detective Tamara Momias, traveled to Oklahoma to visit Daryl, who was serving a life sentence for her previous crimes. Upon arriving at the prison, they were shocked to learn that Daryl Lynn Madden had transitioned into an Orthodox Jew and a transgender woman, now going by the name Darylyn. She comfortably sat across the 2 detectives, willing to answer any questions they would throw at her. During the interview, Lombardi and Momias asked Darylyn about William Newton's murder, and they were surprised at how quickly she recollected who William Newton was. Darylyn told the detectives that on the night of William Newton's murder in October 1990, she and her skinheads friends had spotted William walking down the street. She explained that William had appeared drunk, and they saw him as an easy target for robbery. Darylyn confessed to approaching William, draping her hands around his shoulders and whispering to him that they were going to rob him, kidnap him, and probably beat the crap out of him. But Darylyn's statement proved to be false, as she ended up strangling the man to death, a fact later confirmed by the coroner before dismembering his body. Detectives Lamberti and Momias were stunned by Darylyn's chilling revelation. They pressed her further, asking why William Newton's body had been dismembered and discarded in a dumpster. However, Darylyn denied any involvement, claiming that she had nothing to do with the gruesome act. Darylyn claimed that she left William's body with her friends after they had killed him. When the detectives asked for the names and identities of these friends, Darylyn refused to provide any information, saying, "I might be a murderer, but I am not a snitch." In the days following her confession, Detective John Lamberti, who now had the critical information needed to solve William Newton's case, presented a solid case against Darylyn to the Los Angeles County District Attorney, George Gaskin's office. However, to their frustration, Gaskin declined to file charges, stating that there was not enough evidence to prosecute her. Despite the disappointing outcome, Detective John Lamberti and the amateur sleuths who had tirelessly worked on the case felt a sense of relief that William Newton's murder had been solved, with his killer behind bars for life. The case was officially closed, and William's stepsister, Michelle Oliver, expressed her gratitude for the efforts of those who had investigated her brother's death. "Having some kind of closure helps," Michelle said. However, she still sought answers about why Darylyn and her friends had targeted her brother, and most importantly, the whereabouts of the rest of his body parts. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed exploring these intriguing cold cases with me. If you found the video fascinating, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to Cold Case Mystique for more deep dives into unsolved mysteries. Your support helps me bring you more compelling content. Leave a comment below with your thoughts or any cases you'd like me to cover next. See you in the next video, and remember, the search for truth never stops.